Good evening. It's called the Centers for Disease Control, but there are serious concerns tonight about how well the CDC controls dangerous germs at its own labs after yet another safety lapse. Today, the CDC says it mishandled a shipment of deadly flu virus. This comes after a mishap involving anthrax and the discovery of smallpox virus that was misplaced at the National Institutes of Health. The head of the CDC today, Dr. Tom Frieden, said, quote, he was astonished at the latest breach and angry. Here's Dr. John LaPook.
For the third time in a month, the CDC acknowledged deadly pathogens were handled incorrectly in government labs. CDC Director Dr. Tom Frieden.
So I'm upset, I'm angry, I've lost sleep over it, and I'm working around the clock to make sure we do everything possible to resolve it.
In the latest case revealed today, CDC workers somehow lost track of samples of the dangerous H5N1 influenza virus. The virus wound up being added to a shipment in March from a secure CDC lab in Atlanta to one run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Athens, Georgia. The CDC says both facilities are highly secure and nobody was ever at risk. Frieden said the mistake was discovered in late May, but he was only told about it this week.
Can you take me back to the exact moment when you first found out about H5N1?
I remember it vividly. I was sitting at my desk in our Washington office, and I was stunned and appalled that this could have happened and that there could have been this type of delay in notification.
This comes just after 60-year-old vials of smallpox virus were found in a cardboard box at this NIH building in Maryland. Test results revealed today showed some of the virus is alive. And last month, the agency reported lab workers may have been exposed to live anthrax after sloppy procedures were used at a CDC facility.
Certainly, it's a wake-up call. We need to improve systems, and we will improve systems at CDC.
The two CDC labs involved in the mistakes have closed temporarily, and Frieden declared an agency-wide moratorium on the transfer of any material between its high-security labs.
How can you assure the country that the CDC is doing its job here?
I can understand why people would have questions. I have questions. What happened so far at CDC should never have happened. It's not acceptable.
Forgive me for asking this, but is there anything else that you're not telling us?
No, we really have a commitment to transparency. We tell it like it is, even if it's an uncomfortable fact, and that's the CDC culture.
The CDC has begun an extensive review of safety procedures at the agency. It's creating a new position in charge of lab standards. Dr. Frieden also said appropriate disciplinary action will be taken.
John, do they know whether there might be other misplaced pathogens in the system?
They don't, and I can tell you that government labs are scouring everywhere looking for anything that shouldn't be there. And the CDC is encouraging lab directors all over the country, those are labs that are not controlled by the CDC, to make sure there's nothing in their labs that shouldn't be there, and also to make sure that they review what should be the proper lab procedures.
Dr. John LaPook, thank you, John.
We obviously have high hopes that the questions about the election will be resolved quickly, can be resolved, and that a way forward can take place which can give Afghans confidence that they have a presidency and a government that is capable of unifying all Afghans and building the road to the future.
Our commitment is to ensure that the election process enjoys the integrity and the legitimacy that the people of Afghanistan and the world would believe in. Therefore, we believe in the most intensive and extensive audit possible to restore faith. Yes,
Thousands of kids detained by immigration officials at the border won't have a chance to make their case to stay in the United States.
We see kids are going up in front of the judge by themselves.
Unlike criminal courts, there's no legal right to a taxpayer-funded public attorney in immigration court. Volunteers are scrambling to help.
We try and represent as many as we can or find volunteer attorneys for them, but the problem still exists that over half of the children who are going through these proceedings are still unrepresented.
Advocates say the move to speed up deportations for the more than 50,000 kids caught since October will only make matters worse. Getting reliable information from children to make a case is difficult.
Every other part of our justice system children are actually appointed both an attorney and somebody who advocates on their behalf.
16-year-old Nicole Chavarria made the trip by herself from Peru last summer, but was caught at a border crossing in El Paso. She says she was beaten and forced into labor in Mexico during her month-long trip. She says she did it to be reunited with her parents and American-born 6-year-old sister. Her case is pending.
I'm alone without attorneys.
Immigration court officials declined to be interviewed on camera, but in a written statement say the federal court recently partnered with AmeriCorps to add 100 lawyers.
Options for children to stay in the United States in these deportation proceedings are few, they're complicated, and they're very difficult to obtain.
The federal government hopes that new policies to quickly deport children discourages them from making the trip in the first place.
For decades, Eileen Ford set the standards of beauty at the modeling agency she started with her late husband, Jerry. She launched the careers of Lauren Hutton and a young Brooke Shields. Christy Turlington and Naomi Campbell were classic Ford models, tall and thin. Yet Ford believed a model's charisma was as important as her looks. Eileen Ford died yesterday. She was 92. Today, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed that there would be no let-up in Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, and he would not rule out sending ground troops into the Palestinian territory. Since the latest fighting broke out on Tuesday, Islamic militants have fired more than 600 unguided rockets at Israel. Many of them have been shot down by Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system. Israel says it has hit more than 1,000 targets in Gaza. More than 100 Palestinians have been killed, including dozens of civilians. Holly Williams is in Gaza tonight.
In Rafah this morning, 5 members of one family were killed by an Israeli airstrike. Even as they searched for survivors, more missiles pounded the Gaza Strip. Israel says it's targeting terrorists, and 2 of the dead were Palestinian militants. But the strike also killed their 9-year-old sister, Kefa. Her surviving brother said a final goodbye before they buried Kefa with her father, mother and 2 brothers. Imam Naba Jaber is the leader of the mosque where Kefa's family used to pray. All Israeli people must be punished, he told us, because they hate us. They have no goodwill for babies, for children or for the elderly. How can you kill an entire family? As we interviewed Imam Jaber, the mosque announced the militants had fired more rockets at Israel.
They're saying rockets have been fired.
They don't have Israel's advanced weapons, but the militants' missiles are striking further than ever before and jolting Israelis' sense of security. A direct hit on a gas station in Ashdod this morning injured at least 3 people. So far, though, no Israelis have lost their lives. In Gaza, more are dying every day, and they feel an impotent anger.
Palestinian militants targeted Israel's main international airport today. Those rockets were intercepted by the Israeli military, but Scott, the militants warned they intend to keep trying.
And the Israelis claim they've shot down about 128 of those rockets so far. With the U.S. combat mission coming to an end in Afghanistan, some Afghans who risked their lives to help American soldiers have resettled here in America, but they are now feeling abandoned. Here's Jim Axelrod.
After 7 years translating for the highest levels of the U.S. and Afghan military, Hamid Afzali was a marked man.
They would see you interpreting on the television?
Yeah, Afghan national televisions.
And that would instantly make you a target?
Yeah. Warning.
This note from the Taliban, left on the front door of his business, threatened his family.
Don't think that this is just a paper. I will get you there.
And he knew it was time to go.
Yeah.
How did you decide to come to the United States?
That was the only choice that we had. We had to move here.
Afzali secured one of 3,000 visas open to Afghan interpreters through a State Department program that promised the basics upon arrival: 3 months' rent, furniture, and help finding work.
We had nothing.
The promises were largely empty. He was placed in a small apartment without a single pot or pan, in a neighborhood so dangerous that his 5-year-old son and 3-year-old daughter must play inside. Everything they have was brought by veterans and church groups, including the one tip that led to a few weeks' work.
Sometimes I feel I'm not going to survive with this situation because I'm a proud man. I want to work. I want to support my family. But if there is no way, how to get a job, how to find the ways where to get the job.
We're bringing them here and we're dropping them into slum housing. We're not doing anything whatsoever to help them find jobs.
Matt Zeller is a retired Army captain who was stationed in a remote Afghanistan outpost and now runs a group trying to help the translators adjust to life here.
And more importantly, I want to try and get you guys out of this place. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now if my translator hadn't saved my life. How could we not possibly want to give these people at least something more than a slum and a good luck? And that's it.
As for Afzali, his rundown apartment costs $1,300 a month. Without a job, he and his family now face eviction by the end of the month.
We were the eyes and ears of coalition and American forces. We are left in a lurch, and we don't know where we're going to go or what is going to happen to us tomorrow.
We reached out to the State Department to ask about their awareness of the situation interpreters like Hamid Afzali are facing. The State Department refused to comment on the record. There is a cap on the number of visas issued by the State Department for interpreters, and they expect that limit will be reached within days.
Tonight, Amazon is asking the Federal Aviation Administration for permission to use drones to deliver packages. The goal is to reach customers in just half an hour. While Amazon waits for an answer from the FAA about its shipping plans, Anthony Mason tells us another government agency, the Federal Trade Commission, is suing Amazon over its sales practices.
So here's what you do. You go in the game.
9-year-old Ryan Marshall loves playing games on his parents' phone.
All this stuff you want, you can get.
The game apps are free, but to progress in the game, you often have to pay.
And then I press buy.
Which Ryan did without his mother knowing, until she logged on to her bank account.
I find out that there's $300 missing, then to look and like, well, I don't remember spending this type of money.
Kids, LaShawn Marshall says, are too easily tempted.
Especially if you know mommy's gonna say no, let me just hit okay. She won't know, she'll never know until you get your bill in the mail.
The FTC, in its lawsuit, alleges Amazon illegally billed parents for millions of dollars in unauthorized charges like this.
This was clearly a problem, and Amazon was aware of it.
Melanie Mithel is with the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection.
For 2.5 years, it continued to allow kids to incur these charges without any parental involvement or consent.
In an internal Amazon email in 2011 obtained by the FTC, an App Store manager admitted, quote, "We're clearly causing problems for a large percentage of our customers," calling the level of complaints a near house on fire. Amazon began requiring passwords in 2012, but left open an initial 15-minute window during which kids could still make purchases without permission. The FTC wants Amazon to return the money to parents. Amazon says its practices have been lawful from the outset. In January, Apple settled a similar case with the FTC, agreeing to refund more than $32 million.
Today, the basketball player widely considered to be the best in the world said he will return to the Cleveland Cavaliers. 4 years ago, LeBron James abandoned the team and the city for Miami and went on to win 2 NBA championships. But apparently now, all is forgiven, and Dean Reynolds is in Cleveland.
The announcement set off wild celebrations in a city that has not won a pro championship in any sport for 50 years. My relationship with Northeast Ohio is bigger than basketball, James said in a statement published by Sports Illustrated. I didn't realize that 4 years ago. I do now. James, a native of Akron, Ohio, was a phenomenal playmaker from a very young age who went straight from high school to the Cavaliers. But 4 years ago, James announced his departure for Miami in what amounted to a nationally televised jilting of Cleveland. Humiliated fans burned his jersey and his image was torn from the arena. Cavs owner Dan Gilbert castigated him for a cowardly betrayal. Today, Gilbert tweeted, "Welcome home," and reportedly offered the four-time league MVP a 4-year deal worth $88 million. How different is this emotion today than it was 4 years ago?
It's like hitting the lottery.
At his restaurant today, Freddie Slyman was serving corned beef with a side of big dreams. And do you think you're going to win a championship?
We'll keep our fingers crossed. Nothing's guaranteed, but we got a better chance now than we did yesterday.
I am so freaking happy to get this guy back in this town.
Anthony Lima is a local sportscaster for CBS Radio.
What it means financially for the people of this city, what it means mentally, psychologically, all of that is intertwined.
While Cavalier attendance dropped 15% during James' absence,
all circuits are busy now.
Today, callers jammed their switchboard. And as for Miami, a team mural said it all, with the face of James blacked out. Now, the Forbes magazine estimates that with LeBron James on the Cavaliers, the value of the franchise could increase by as much as $100 million. And Scott, the odds makers in Las Vegas are saying that the contenders, the Cavaliers, are real contenders, and a 4-to-1 bet to win the championship next year.
Dogs and donkeys roam the alleyways of Miranshah, capital of North Waziristan and former stronghold of the Pakistani Taliban. There's little left here after Islamabad launched an air offensive and then ground operations to root out the militants in early July. The civilian population fled beforehand, and on this tour given to the media, the army claims to have cleared most of the town.
It's going to take a little time for the combat engineers to get employed and clear the IEDs part of it. And while this is being done concurrently, it is being cleared from the terrorists physically also. And hopefully in next few days, we should be able to clear it 100%.
The military says around 400 Taliban fighters were killed in the operation. Enter further into Miranshah and the tools of their trade are all around. Soldiers show off 23 tons of explosives they say they found in the bazaar, along with suicide vests and other weaponry. This house, they claim, used to recruit would-be bombers.
This is a sort of a certificate which the suicide bomber used to sign over here, and the picture was taken at this spot, and there were certain terms and conditions which he used to have to sign to and abide to. So these are the certificates over here lying on the table.
Afghanistan is barely 20 kilometers down the road, and according to the Pakistani army, the Taliban have long held sway here.
I think this looked like a terrorist economy. It was, a whole chain of things which were being sold in the city. You could find a shop which was selling IED, another shop which was selling a fuse, and a third shop which was selling cod and a detonator. So this seemed to be like a, economic chain of the terrorists.
Despite its apparent success, Pakistan recognizes many Taliban leaders may have slipped away before the offensive. The fight is far from finished in these tribal areas, and no one expects normal life to return to Miranshah anytime soon.
Journalist and civil rights advocate John Siegenthaler died today. A longtime reporter and editor at the Tennessean, he also served as an aide to Robert Kennedy. In 1961, working for the Justice Department, Siegenthaler was knocked unconscious by a mob of Klansmen as he tried to rescue a freedom rider. John Siegenthaler was 86.
יש שם צוותים בתוכו. תשאל איפה עומדים, בערך הדובר ממקם את כולם במקום אחד. תשאל איפה כולם עומדים, זה כבר מסודר. נבוא לשם, אין בעיה.
That headline from overseas, a spy game showdown. The CIA's top officer in Berlin ordered to leave by the German government. Allegations of espionage, a move both rare and harsh from what is ordinarily a close U.S. ally. ABC's chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl has been talking to his sources all day, and so now from a rainy Washington, here's John.
Diane, this is an extraordinary move. The German government has ordered the CIA station chief in Germany to get out of the country, the kind of thing we almost never see with a close ally. But Germany is outraged by what it considers U.S. spy games. Last week, German police arrested a government employee, a German government employee, accused of spying for the U.S., and just yesterday raided the apartment of a second alleged U.S. spy. This is especially embarrassing for President Obama. If you remember, when German Chancellor Angela Merkel's phone calls were listened into, it was revealed by the U.S., the president personally promised that she would not have to worry about U.S. spying. The White House is saying almost nothing about this latest revelation, but make no mistake about it, there is some serious damage control going on with U.S. officials and the government of Germany.
We know from our history, our economy does not grow from the top down, it grows from the middle up. It grows from a rising, thriving middle class. It grows when we got ladders of opportunity for everybody, and every young person in America is feeling hopeful and has a chance to do what they can with the God-given talents that they have. That's what we're fighting for. That is what you should be fighting for. And I will always look for ways to get Republicans and Democrats together in this effort. But I can't stand by with partisan gridlock that's the result of cynical political games that threaten the hard work of millions of Americans. I'm not just going to stand by and say, okay, I guess that's the way it is. Whenever and wherever I have the power, the legal authority to help families like yours, even if Congress is not doing anything, I will take that opportunity. I will try to make something happen. And that's the reason why my administration has taken more than 40 different actions just this year to help working Americans. Because Congress won't. Congress won't act to make sure a woman gets equal pay for equal work, so I made more women have the protections they need to fight for fair pay in the workplace, because I think when women succeed, America succeeds. So we went ahead and did that. Congress won't act to create jobs in manufacturing or construction. Well, I went ahead and speeded up permits for big projects. We launched a new hub to attract more high-tech manufacturing jobs to America. I want to make sure the next revolution in manufacturing is right here in America. It's an American revolution, not a German or a Chinese revolution. I want it happening right here in Austin, Texas. Congress so far hasn't acted to help more young people manage their student loan debt. So I acted with my lawful authority to give nearly 5 million Americans the chance to cap their student loan payments at 10% of their income so they can manage it better, so that if they go into teaching or they go into social work or they're doing something in a non-for-profit, that they're not encumbered by mountains of debt. I don't want our future leaders saddled with debt before they start out in life. And Republicans in Congress so far have refused to raise workers' wages with a higher minimum wage. So I acted to require that federal contractors pay their employees a fair wage of at least $10.10 an hour, which would give hundreds of thousands of workers a raise. I asked business owners and governors and mayors and state legislators, anybody I could work with, do what you can on your own, I told them. Since the first time I asked Congress to raise the minimum wage, Congress hasn't done anything, but 13 states have gone ahead and raised theirs. And by the way, this is important to remember, just because folks are always trying to run the okey doke on you. And the states that have increased their minimum wages this year have seen higher job growth than the states that have not increased their minimum wages. And more business owners are choosing to lift wages for their workers because they understand that it's going to be good to have productive workers, loyal workers, invested workers. Just yesterday, before I came down to Texas, when I was in Denver, I met with Carolyn Reed. She owns 6 silver mine sub shops. She started her own business. She was working at UPS and decided she wanted to be a business owner. Got her first franchise, or her and her husband mortgaged their house. Eventually, they got an SBA loan. Now she's got 6 stores. Wonderful woman. And today, she decided to raise her hourly employees' wages to a minimum of $10.10 an hour. She just went ahead and did it on her own because she realized that she'll have less turnover and she's going to have more productive workers. As long as Congress will not increase wages for workers, I will go and talk to every business in America if I have to. There's no denying a simple truth. America deserves a raise, and if you work full-time in this country, you shouldn't live in poverty. That's something that we all believe. Now here's where it gets interesting. There are a number of Republicans in Congress, including a number in the Texas delegation, who are mad at me for taking these actions. They actually plan to sue me. Now, I don't know which I find most offensive, me helping to create jobs, or me raising wages, or me easing the student loan burdens, or me making sure women can find out whether they're getting paid the same as men for doing the same job. I don't know which of these actions really bug them. The truth is, even with all the actions I've taken this year, I'm issuing executive orders at the lowest rate in more than 100 years. So it's not clear how it is that Republicans didn't seem to mind when President Bush took more executive actions than I did. Maybe it's just me they don't like. I don't know. Maybe there's some principle out there that I haven't discerned, that I haven't figured out. You hear some of them. They're like, sue him, impeach him. Really? Really? For what? You're going to sue me for doing my job? Okay. I mean, think about that. You're going to use taxpayer money to sue me for doing my job while you don't do your job. There's a great movie called The Departed, a little violent for kids, but there's this scene in the movie where Mark Wahlberg, they're on a stakeout, and somehow the guy loses the guy that they're tracking, and Wahlberg's all upset and yelling at the guy, and the guy looks up and he says, "Well, who are you?" And Wahlberg says, "I'm the guy doing my job. You must be the other guy." Sometimes I feel like saying to these guys, "I'm the guy doing my job. You must be the other guy." So rather than wage another political stunt that wastes time, wastes taxpayers' money, I've got a better idea. Do something. If you're mad at me for helping people on my own, let's team up. Let's pass some bills. Let's help America together.
Vladimir Putin is in Cuba's capital to start a week-long tour of Latin America, his longest foreign tour since returning to the Kremlin in 2012. Well, ahead of the journey, he gave an interview in which he insisted that in today's globalized world, no state or group of countries can tackle international problems by themselves. Our correspondent Alexei Rashevsky is following the president to see what South America and Russia have to offer each other.
The sun-faded buildings of Havana may make a good tourist picture, but they are a part of a sad reality. Time seems to be standing still here. 50 years of sanctions against Cuba is having a huge toll on the country's economy. Cubans want to move forward, but in order to do that, they need a strong partner, and Moscow has made no secret it is willing to become one. That's why the first stop of Vladimir Putin's longest ever foreign trip to Latin American countries starts here. Putin and Raul Castro will rubber stamp an unprecedented agreement. Moscow is writing off 90% of Cuba's debt to the USSR. That's $32 billion, astronomical money for a poor country like Cuba. The remaining 10% will be reinvested into social and infrastructure projects on Cuba. The intrigue is what Havana will offer in return. Speculation takes in everything from major oil deals, Cuba potentially has a lot of it but has no money to extract, to rebuilding Soviet military bases on the island. And that's less than 100 miles from the coast of the United States. The next stop is Buenos Aires. President Kirchner has been very supportive of Moscow in its standoff with the West and regrets that trade with Russia has not been better. The two leaders will aim to increase the annual $1.8 billion turnover, but its energy deals where both hope to gain a lot. A fifth of Argentina's power is provided using Russian technology, and the new nuclear power plant, which will be built by Russia, a multi-billion deal, will certainly increase that. Last but certainly not least is Brazil. Not only will Putin be lucky enough to witness the World Cup final from the stands and go through a symbolic handover of Mundial from Brazil to Russia, he has a lot to discuss with Dilma Rousseff. Brazil is Russia's key trading partner in Latin America, and the two leaders share a common view on US wiretapping scandals. President Rousseff was one of the world leaders whose phone was hacked by the NSA. So a joint information security project will be on the agenda. Here Putin will also meet a dozen Latin American presidents in hope of striking new partnerships. The tour will culminate with a BRICS summit, where the final bricks of a joint bank will be laid. The new financial body will have a $100 billion budget and could represent a solid attempt by developing economies to become less dependent on the US dollar.
The World Cup's hosts may well prefer to lick their wounds in private after their epic meltdown against Germany in semi-finals. But Brazil still have one more game. They're vying for third place in a playoff with the Netherlands. It's their last chance to woo back their disillusioned fans and wash away some of the bitterness of their defeat. Brazil's star striker Neymar, on the sidelines due to back injury, was faced with the tough task of cheering up his team.
It happened. It's over. We have to bounce back now and play Saturday's match as though it were a final. We have to finish the World Cup with a smile.
Brazil took their leaders' advice to heart and are in high spirits ahead of the game. They are also keen to get another player back. Captain Thiago Silva, suspended during semi-finals, will be joining them for the consolation game. The Dutch have much less at stake. Beaten after a spotless record on penalties by Argentina, the Netherlands would rather have played on Sunday at Rio's Maracana than on Saturday in Brasilia for the so-called losers' final.
We
were just talking about it in the car with Dirk. We are realizing that there is something else we can and must fight for. No Dutch team has come home unbeaten. So that has to be our next target.
Regardless of the outcome, there's already a winner. Brazil coach Luis Felipe Scolari is still reeling from his team's dramatic fail, while his Dutch counterpart returns home a hero for having brought the Oranje so far.
Hundreds of thousands of tourists have visited Brazil for the World Cup, and business is booming for many in São Paulo.
With the World Cup, we run out of merchandise very quickly, and each week we have to refill our stocks.
The economic impact of sporting events is hard to quantify, but some are saying Brazil could get as much as a $13 billion boost from the tournament.
Eu acho que o Brasil a médio prazo, né, é país que tem.
I think that Brazil in the midterm is a country very likely to have a 3.5 to 4% growth rate a year, which is very satisfying for an economy with changing demographics.
Cuja dinâmica demográfica mudou, não é?
But opinions differ on who will benefit most. In this favela on the outskirts of Sao Paulo, people are unhappy and feel marginalized.
As pessoas que vieram para a Copa não participam desse lado, né? Não vêm para esse
People who come for the World Cup don't come here. To me, the World Cup has meant spending more money as consumer goods are more expensive. We didn't gain anything.
Benefício, eu não vi nenhum.
Brazil, the world's 7th biggest economy, spent $11 billion of public money to host a football extravaganza, a level of investment that triggered massive protests last year, with many people demanding better education, health and transport services.
The GDP increased from 0.3 to 0.5 points due to the World Cup, which is not a lot compared to what Brazil had to spend to host this event. It's true that people are very happy because of the World Cup, and it's beautiful to see the football games. But we don't believe the economic impact will be significant.
Beyond the World Cup and Brazil's humiliating defeat, President Dilma Rousseff will need to convince voters that hosting the tournament was all worth it ahead of her bid for re-election in October.